This is your government video on political cartoons. One of the skills you'll have to learn is how to analyze political cartoons. And this is also probably one of the more fun and engaging parts of our course. So if you've never looked at political cartoons or you haven't seen one in a while, there's a couple of things to look for. A political cartoon is basically the artist's way of taking their own opinion and applying it to a current event or news story. So a lot of times they use symbols. For example, the use of Uncle Sam to represent the United States government would be an example of that. So instead of putting a map of the US up, they turn America into a person, and they use Uncle Sam with the hat and the red, white, and blue outfit to represent the United States. They also use exaggeration or caricature. This could be of a particular feature on a person. If we're using the United States example of Uncle Sam and they want to exaggerate the claim that Americans are greedy, then maybe Uncle Sam has money bulging out of his pockets. Another thing that you should always do once you've identified the symbols and whether they're exaggerating certain things is to read all of the dialogue and see if you can come up with a pattern through the text and the words on the political cartoon, what it's linking to, what kind of current event or news story. Sometimes the artist uses irony. So for example, if we take the Uncle Sam and Uncle Sam has money in his pockets, and maybe they are having Uncle Sam give money to a different symbol for a smaller, maybe less fortunate country. And this is true in real life. The United States gives money to developing nations. So maybe they're using that particular truth in order to bring out some type of irony in the situation that's currently happening. Another thing they do is use stereotypes. So it is very stereotypical that Americans are greedy and we don't care about things going on in other countries. And so they might take Uncle Sam and make him look even more greedy. The money is bulging out of his hands and we're just letting money fall to the wayside and, we're just overspending. And then you always want to see if there is a direct link to something going on in the United States right now or in the world, because almost always it is a direct reflection of current events and news cycles. So I'm giving you an example here, and this is one that should also be on your guided notes. I want you to figure out what you think this means, and feel free to pause the video and take a couple of notes on your guided notes. Hopefully you identified that the characters in the foreground are Native Americans, indigenous populations, probably to what is now the United States. And those boats coming in look like colonists from Europe, pilgrims coming to the New World. And the dialogue says, I say let them in. What's the worst that could happen? So if you didn't already make this connection, this particular cartoon is about immigration. And it's about the current immigration struggle. And there's a couple of ways that you could interpret this. Either, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, when the European colonists came to the New World, they, started wars with the Native American tribes. They stole their land. Lots of devastating things happened to indigenous people in the United States. So what's the worst that could happen? Oh, the worst probably did happen. And so some people use this to say, hey, with current immigration, really bad things can happen when you let new populations in. You can also interpret it a different way, that the white immigrants that are coming here are wiping out the indigenous population. And now it's currently the white majority in the United States that's fearful of people of color immigrating to our country, or people who speak a different language, or people that come from countries that are less fortunate than the United States income-wise. And so therefore, the white immigrants were the ones that really devastated the people who had been here already, and yet they're not offering that same extension to other people. For your active learning, I have given you this political cartoon. I want you to interpret this on your active learning page. Take into account those things we talked about on how to correctly analyze a political cartoon.